I wanted to mention the Trump-DeSantis battle. I saw Fox News, Buck, came out with a poll yesterday afternoon, evening, showing Trump opening a commanding lead. Now, to be fair, the national polls don't really matter that much because, and we'll be talking about this more and more as the primary season gets closer, people in Iowa and people in New Hampshire are going to set the agenda for the Republican nomination battle by what they do in January and February as we get ready for all the primaries that'll be rolling out in 2024 to pick the nominee. But I think it is fair to say that DeSantis had incredible momentum coming off of a 19-point win in the state of Florida. And he's not officially in the race. It appears that he's going to enter the race sometime after the Florida legislative session ends. But Trump has taken a commanding lead right now. To be fair, again, it's only basically April. We still have 8 months until the actual votes start getting tallied, and 9 months, all those things. But here's Trump going after DeSantis. I want you to listen to this. And then we come back. Is DeSantis still in this game? Or is he potentially having second thoughts about running as Trump has been pummeling him for months without him really returning fire? Listen.
Such as Mitt Romney and Ron DeSantis, very much alike, who insist on arrogantly treating Russia as deeply inferior to the other nations of the world, with no history or culture or pride, are not only ignorant and foolish, but their attitude makes it impossible to negotiate peace. Absolutely impossible. This kind of neocon rhetoric mocking Russia's nuclear weapons, along with implying that Putin must be tried and presumably executed as a war criminal, only increases the chance of deadly nuclear escalation.
So, Clay, a few things here. I watched this statement, and Trump is landing some punches here. Not really so much because of Ron gave a long interview to Piers Morgan. I still don't understand why that interview was with Piers Morgan, but let's just put that aside. I haven't met anybody with a compelling explanation of that. But when he was talking about the foreign policy issues, he said Russia is a gas station. That's not that. Look, it's not a good thing to say. It's not a true thing to say, right? It's something that doesn't really show an understanding of the Russian history and its role in the world. But beyond that, it ties directly to comments that, and this is already out in that ad, that Mitt Romney and John McCain said effectively the same line at different points, which, by the way, was a stupid line then, too. Although it is interesting that Mitt Romney did say when he was debating Barack Obama that, Russia was a threat. And remember what Barack Obama said?
Biggest threat, I think, and everybody ridiculed him.
That's right. And then Barack Obama said the 1980s call that wants its foreign policy back. It's funny when you think about how, oh, Politico and MSNBC thought that was hilarious, but now we're all terrified of Russia under our bed. Anyway, the reason that it matters that he's hitting him on this issue is much more because Trump is trying to portray, the attack from Trump world on DeSantis is that he's a neocon, establishment, intellectually fancy guy. That's really what this is. He's a think tank, Harvard fancy guy who wants the business as usual GOP. That's the attack. And by the way, that will hurt him in the primary if that becomes the perception. What I think is interesting is that it lays open an opportunity for Ron DeSantis to say, I'm a middle-class guy with middle-class parents. He's still a middle-class guy. I mean, not after
money.
The book deal, but he's not a wealthy guy at all. Not by congressional standards, not by gubernatorial standards. He could say, I'm just like you. I grew up middle class. He might say, nobody gave me millions of dollars. He might say that. I mean, he could, theoretically. And he could start to reach out, more importantly, reach out to the Trump base, the working class. And it's funny because I don't think the Trump base finds working class to be some kind of pejorative. They're working really hard. They're trying to stay ahead of their bills. They're working, right? Yeah. Reach out to the Trump base that is working for their pay every day and say, I'm the one who understands your struggle. I lived your struggle, and I will actually do things to help your struggle. And I think that's where he has to go. because if it turns into, even though Trump went to an Ivy League school and is a billionaire and all that, if it turns into Trump is the guy that the construction workers, the truck drivers, and the patrolmen love, and Ron DeSantis is the guy that people looking at their 401ks from the golf course love in this Republican primary, Trump's going to win.
What I would say in general, I said this yesterday, the only way DeSantis can win is if he's willing to straight up call Trump a loser. Nobody, but let me say this too. Nobody else is even in the race. Trump has been incredibly smart because he recognizes his only competition is DeSantis. Have you heard Trump hardly say anything about Nikki Haley or Mike Pompeo or Mike Pence or Tim Scott or whoever it is? Zero conversation about it. And I have been really impressed with Trump's ability to increase his support since November, when I think it's fair to say he was at his nadir. He was at his low. He has increased his support substantially. Now, what I would say in general, I flagged this because I thought it was so interesting. And I'm not trying to take a shot at Rudy Giuliani with these numbers. But at this exact time, Buck, in 2008, do you know what the polls were showing this week? 2008 Republican nomination. Rudy Giuliani, plus 16, plus 10, plus 13, plus 9, plus 14. Rudy Giuliani didn't even get into the race hardly. So we're still so far out. Lots of things can change. Iowa and New Hampshire will tell us far more. I would tell you to pay attention to the primary polls in Iowa and New Hampshire as opposed to the nation as a whole, because as we have seen, whatever happens in those primaries alters the trajectory a ton. And remember, what did Biden come in? 5th in Iowa and 5th in New Hampshire, I think. And then he won the primary in South Carolina, and it wasn't even close. If we had come on back after Iowa and New Hampshire and said Biden's the guy, people would have laughed us out of the building.
Remember who the great hope of Democrats in 2004? I won't try to do an impersonation of the scream. Howard Dean.
Oh yeah,
Howard Dean. Remember that? He was the guy, man. He was ahead. He was the. So yeah, to your point, it doesn't tell you very much who's leading the polls right now. But I do think there are some big, outstanding battles and some big components of the narrative that are already set in place right now. And I think one challenge from the DeSantis camp, assuming he gets in, we're all assuming it, so I guess I'll stop saying it. Assuming he gets in, is that there's I think at the level of a governor, great results are really the best you can ask for generally, right? If you get great results from your governor, that's what you want, right? Because I don't care what the governor of Montana is doing, really. Like, it doesn't affect your life, right? You don't care what the governor of New Mexico is doing right now. It doesn't really affect you. Once you get into the presidential side of things, you have to be more than just good at that job that you had. You have to be the leader of a movement, of a national movement, which takes a whole additional skill set into play.